Good morning. Good morning on this somewhat dark and smoky morning, Tuesday morning, September 15. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Jim and Kathy, you're the first ones to arrive on my screen anyway. By the way, Kathy, I failed to mention yesterday, happy birthday. Yesterday was your day, so in the kind of the craziness of my morning, I forgot to mention that. So I hope you had a great day. And while we're thinking about birthdays, today is Sue Brady's birthday. Now, Jerry and Sue are night people, so I doubt that they're watching this early in the morning. But if you're happen to watch later today, Sue, happy birthday to you. Carmen, welcome this morning. Good to see you. Hey, Mark Hooper, good morning. Yeah, Jerry Brady's home now. I was able to visit him yesterday. Went by their house, and he's resting and recovering well from his surgery. And that, there's time for that to happen. It's going to be a slow process, but glad he's home. Mike and Joe, welcome. Lori cares. Hey, Mom, good morning to you. Dana Kreshak, good morning. Hope you're feeling better today. The fact that you've shown up here in this live stream makes me think that you might be feeling okay today. Daryl and Suzanne, welcome this morning. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, so we are today we're back in the Sermon on the Mount with Jesus, and he is preaching the kingdom principles. So we are going to study that this morning a little bit. Hey, Sierra Para, welcome. And Josh, good to see you this morning. Stacy Riggle, Terry and Stacy, so good to see you here this morning. We miss you guys. Hope you're having good settling in there in Wyoming. And Letitia Sexton, hey, good morning to you. Welcome, everybody. So we're in Matthew chapter 5. 5, 6, and 7 are all the Sermon on the Mount. And we're on Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 this morning. And this is a familiar verse. We've all heard it. It's where Jesus makes the statement, "You are the salt of the earth." And this is such an important reality for us to recognize when we're listening to the preaching of the kingdom by Jesus and the principles and the values of the kingdom. We in turn are to take them to heart and live them out. I mean, the whole Sermon on the Mount ends in chapter 7 with Jesus' illustration of those who build wisely versus building foolishly. Wise is the man who builds his house on a rock, right? Because when the storms of life come, it's gonna stand. And how is one building his house on a rock? Jesus says, it is those who hear my words and put them into practice. And this idea is exactly what Jesus is implying by saying, you are the salt of the earth in Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. So salt was a really valuable commodity in the ancient world, and it was used for a number of different ways. It was even used as currency, how you paid somebody as day's wage, sometimes using salt because of its value. And, this is where we get our phrase, are you worth your salt, which is kind of the catchphrase I use for today's title. But the value of salt, I think that Jesus is implying most of all in this statement is its value as a preservative. So, modern day we put things that would spoil in our refrigerator. We keep it cold. It slows the process of decay and the production of bacteria. Whereas in the ancient world, they didn't have refrigerators and freezers, right? So what they did was they would rub salt on meat, salt-cured fish, and so on to get it to last more than just a day. And this is really probably the heart of what Jesus is saying in regard to you are salt. You are like salt. You have the properties of salt in that you are a preservative in the world. You are the salt of the earth. And there's another phrase we use that carries this idea when you talk about someone who is a contributor in society versus someone who is kind of leeches off of society. If you're talking about someone in a positive way, they're a contributor. They're the salt of the earth. What do you think about so and so? Oh, salt of the earth type of person. What we mean by that is they're a hard worker. They're a contributor to society, and that's also when we say, are you worth your salt? It carries that value as well. Salt of the earth is someone who is a positive, making a positive impact in the world. They're making a positive impression to people around them. They're contributing to people's lives around them. And in particular, when Jesus uses this understanding and phraseology, he's speaking of believers who have heard the words and teachings of Jesus. They have placed their faith in him and now are living out these values in the world and acting as a preservative. The Bible tells us that when we're left to our own devices, apart from faith in Jesus Christ, our inclination is to do whatever we think is right, and to follow the lusts and passions of our own flesh. And without keeping that in check in any way, you see the segments of our society in particular that go down very dark roads and commit crimes and are immoral in their lifestyle and so on. And we fortunately live in for the most part, a moral society that upholds morals and social justice and so on. And that is an act that is really reflective of the goodness of God played out on earth. Taking that a step further, as believers, we have the responsibility to be salt in the earth, and that we are living out and preaching the very message of Jesus Christ and living out the values of the kingdom that are being preached all throughout this Sermon on the Mount. We've talked about the Beatitudes already, and that these values of the kingdom are not always what you would expect people that don't have faith to exhibit. And so Jesus is preaching a value system that goes beyond just normally being good, or normally just kind of a normal moral contribution to society. He's actually asking us to take the extra step in serving one another, to laying down our lives for one another, to not just be tolerant of our enemies or those who have a different viewpoint than us, but actually be loving our enemies. We think about the later story that Jesus uses when somebody asks about the law, who is my neighbor? Who are the two greatest commandments? Love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And the question is, okay, who's my neighbor? And Jesus uses the illustration of a Samaritan that cares for the needs of a Jew in need. And these are two people groups that don't like each other. And Jesus uses this as an illustration of the kind of kingdom principles of loving someone that you don't really have any personal gain. You don't get anything from. In fact, it costs you something to love them. And it are these types of principles that Jesus says it is up to the church. It is up to those of us who have placed our faith in Jesus Christ to be living out these principles in the world, so that we stand out as believers in Jesus, that are going above and beyond the normal social and moral codes of goodness. And this should be evident in our lives. And Jesus says, if that's just the first phrase in Matthew 5:13, you are the salt of the earth, but there's a consequence if we don't act this way. He says, but if the salt loses its saltiness, what value has it? It becomes worthless, he says. And it really is to be thrown out and trampled under the foot of man. And without going into what we think that trampling means or could mean, there's lots of conjecture about that. The heart of what Jesus is saying that seems to be very clear is, if we know the truth and we proclaim to have placed our faith in Jesus, yet we are not living in accordance with the teachings of Jesus — this seems to be the context of the Sermon on the Mount itself — then we're worthless in our ability to be salt on the earth. If the salt isn't doing what it's supposed to do, then it isn't fulfilling any purpose. It doesn't have any worth associated and attached to it. And so Jesus says, first and foremost, those who hear these words of mine and put them into practice are the salt of the earth. Those who hear these words of mine and don't put them into practice, then your impact is worthless. You are akin to someone who is a foolish builder building their house on sand. And so that's my encouragement today, is how, when you examine your own life, and it's easy to say, broad brush this stuff, but the reality is, how am I doing this today? What are the things, is my life impacting someone else by my choices that align themselves with the teaching and ministry of Jesus Christ? I proclaim to know Jesus. I proclaim to have the Spirit of God living in me. How is that being lived out in my life today? Not just in Christian's life or the woes of the church. Is the church doing this? No. How am I doing this today? In my family, at my workplace, in my social circles, on social media? How are my words and actions portraying kingdom values? Am I going above and beyond the normal good social codes of the day? I'm at least living that out, but I'm going beyond it, because as we see in our news and social media and places all over, different conversations and so on, how people are justifying pretty dark behavior in the name of a social justice. And so on. And that should not be characteristic of us as believers who are upholding kingdom values. And so how are we doing that today? And I just encourage you to ask that question. How are you living out your faith today? How are you being the salt of the world? And are you worth your salt today? That's the question we're asking of ourselves. Am I living up to the name of Jesus in my life today? Not yesterday. We can repent from yesterday and mourn yesterday if we failed, but today's a new day. How are we doing it right now, today? Ask that question and make a change if you need to. If you don't need to make a change, how are you proactively living out your faith today? So that's my encouragement for today, and that's the question I'm asking of myself, and I'm journaling so that I can proactively promote the kingdom values in my life, in my marriage, in the people that I value in my life, and even those whom live a life that is contrary to the values that I profess. How am I demonstrating the values of the kingdom to them? So I hope you have a good day. God bless you all today. Praying for you. We will see you tomorrow morning.